Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Heart of Innovation. Today, we are diving into the fascinating realm of microcurrent therapy. We will be talking to Chris Bazzy. He is the founder of a company called BioCell Life. It's a company at the forefront of this revolutionary approach to healing. Chris and his team have developed this technology that uses microcurrents to actually reduce inflammation, remove plaque, and even heal wounds. And that is so important, especially for diabetic patients, to have a technology like this that could help get them the last mile to heal their wounds. But before we get to Chris Bazzy and we talk about microcurrents and we get into this shocking episode of the Heart of Innovation, I want to welcome my co-host, Dr. John.
Hello,
Welcome.
Kimberly. How are you? Welcome.
I'm doing
Happy.
fantastic. Good to see you.
Indeed, yes, indeed. I love the shocking, the pun intended. That's fantastic. It's interesting, right? When you think about electricity and folks, certain things come to mind, and shock is one of them, and electrocution and things of that nature. But clearly, there is a role for this to help not only I think with folks that have chronic pain, but also it sounds like kind of helping heal wounds, which that's a big problem for folks, particularly patients who might have difficulty moving around and they develop a pressure ulcer that just won't heal. And they are very difficult to deal with, and it requires a lot of TLC, a lot of home health. And I think anything where you can literally just bridge that gap and allow for the tissue to heal on its own is going to be well received. So I'm looking forward to talking to Chris and learning about
And it's
BioCell and all that good stuff.
and I know that there probably are going to be a lot of skeptics out there that say, "Oh gosh, that's just nonsense. Come on." But when I sat down with Chris and his colleagues last week, I was in Las Vegas at BioCell Life, and we were talking about just simply the fact that we are electricity. When you go to restart a heart, what do? They shock you. And if you think about it, walking through the casinos over at in Las Vegas, and you walk across the floor and suddenly you touch metal, it's shocking, right? So there's electricity going through our bodies. And what really drove it home for me was they had this device, and it was a child's toy, which I'm sure Chris will get into in a moment and maybe even demonstrate. But it's a device that if you hold hands around and one person has it in their hand and no one's on the other side, there's no flashing of light. But as someone touches the other end, there's a connection. So both sides, so it's conducting electricity. If they let go of one of the hands in the circle, it stops generating. And it just shows how quickly the electricity moves through all of us. So keeping that in mind, I think everyone should have an open mind, as I did, in this technology, because at the very least, you know what? If nothing else is working on that inflammation in your shoulder or the scar tissue in your back or the diabetic wound that isn't healing, why not try? At least it's not going to hurt you. It might help you. And so it's good to explore these types of options to just give people a little glimmer of hope that there might be something else out there for them.
I,
But big
yes,
conversation ahead.
100%. 100%.
I
Agree
think we
100%. Yeah, you got to open your mind. That's part of what you and I do, the innovation part of it, and getting people to think outside the box and
can.
getting them inspired, so to speak.
Yep, and it's not to give people false hope.
Yeah,
It's
of
just
course.
we have to talk about what's out there and we have to talk about it in a responsible way. And that's why I like the fact that, there might not be all of the evidence that we need for this medicine to have it become adopted and be a part of the guidelines. No, but you know what? The reason I got into doing this show in the first place was I like just talking about these things in a very responsible manner, at least bringing it to the forefront, at least having the opportunity to give people hope that there are people out there, even if the technology is not ready to help them now. There might be something in the future that we're moving towards. At least we're moving in the right direction. And that's what I think is so important about what we're doing.
100%. I mean, think about how far medicine has come over the last 60, 70 years. Somebody was telling me that this gentleman is probably in his mid 60s. His mom was a nurse at our hospital back when it opened, and which, let's say, in the 1930s, whatever it was. And so cataract surgery, they said the patient would come in and they would end up having to like lay flat and have like sandbags evidently attached to their head, and so they wouldn't move. And I think they were supposed to stay there for like a week, right? Well, now you fast forward and cataracts are done in 10 minutes in an outpatient facility, right? So I mean, obviously these things change, and it just takes somebody to kind of think outside the box, develop something, and then change happens. Very, very inspirational, I
And
think.
sometimes you just fall right into it, which we're going to hear from Chris in a moment how he fell into it. But first, I think we need a moment of inspiration.
I've dropped the word inspirational twice now, and I'm glad you we're on the same wavelength here. So
We got
I
the same currents,
we certainly did.
same
So
frequency.
we did, and I was looking for kind of a quote from a famous physicist or somebody who helped develop electricity. And Ohm was electrical engineer, and he came up with Ohm's law for frequency, current, all that good stuff. And I was trying to find a quote from him. I couldn't really find anything that was, I thought, inspirational enough. So I found something from Thomas Edison, who obviously is somebody who helped develop electricity, right? So he's quoted as saying, and I kind of like this: many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. You think about,
Yes.
if you had a crystal ball, you know exactly you wouldn't give up. But I mean, people people who quit, oftentimes I don't think know how truly close they are. So again, it's that perseverance and pushing the envelope for new technologies and therapies, such as what Chris is going to talk to us about today.
And I think Chris can relate to that. I mean, on this entrepreneurial journey, Chris, I know you don't want to give up, but there probably have been times where there's so many naysayers out there that you just are like on the verge. You're like, I can't give up. I can't be that person that's on the verge and then backs off and gives up on something that could give so many people hope in the future, right?
hmm Yeah, there've been a lot between CEOs of hospitals, physicians, um, clinical directors, people that oversaw a lot of large facilities, workers' comp facilities, hotels, people that oversaw the employees of hotels. It comes down to everybody, I think, can understand when you hear the simplicity of everything behind it. But what it comes down to is how do you fit within a system that doesn't allow it to fit? And so something that I have read, and it just goes perfectly with what we're talking about here, is there was a book that came out in the early 1970s, and the book was called Future Shock. And the author was name was Alvin Toffler. And Alvin Toffler was talking about societal changes in technology and the amount of stress that was going to be imposed on people in the future. A lot of what he said was came to fruition in the book. He was a futurist at some point. But one of the quotes that he had that really stuck with me is he said that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those that cannot read or write. It will be those that cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn.
I like that. I
Yeah.
think that's so important. I mean,
hmm
you can
And we're
never
there
stop.
today.
Yeah. I mean, the people that become complacent, that's really
Mhm.
what I find is so wrong
Yeah.
with medicine today is there are still a large contingency of physicians and clinicians that do remain complacent. I mean, you work hard, right?
hmm
Your entire career, you study,
hmm
you constantly learning and growing, and then finally you kind of get into a certain groove and you're kind of like, I like it here. I have a family at home, and which everyone has a right to. I like the balance in my life. As Dr. John will tell you, to stay on the edge of innovation, you have to sacrifice a lot in your life. I mean, John is everywhere. John is on call. John is saving the piggies at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night if an emergency comes in. And then he's traveling to conferences to teach other doctors and on and on and on. constantly learning, constantly growing.
And constantly taking us to break. So stay with us. We'll be right back. You do not want to miss this episode. That
I
was a
can
That
get
was
my,
Bazzy.
beautiful.
I can
I
get
was
my,
waiting for it.
huh? What?
I was waiting for it, Dr. John. You did great.
Oh yes, yes indeed. So Chris, normally what happens is Kim sends it to break because she's much more fluid than I am and fluent in things, and then I bring it back because it's easier. And so that was just a reversal. And plus, that's actually the probably the first time a guest has given us a quote that is as inspirational as the quote, or probably more inspirational as the quote that I gave. So kudos to you.
That's
Uh,
a good it's a good place to begin probably in the next segment because I knew you were watching the break, but you probably have a little something. But I had to give you a little plug in there, John, because I know how hard all of you work, and I want to inspire all the others that are
mhm,
watching that are in this business that we get it. We appreciate it. You know, those limb salvage specialists, it takes some real grit. It
mhm,
I,
really, really
I
does.
think I think it's I thought I had read somewhere that after about 10 years of doing something, most people kind of get not bored with it, but well, maybe bored, but they can become complacent, and so they look to do other things, or for us, it's maybe working more with industry or doing or
mhm.
switching to doing a different procedure or something along those lines. And I think that's where you get into a rut when you kind of
Yeah.
just doing the same thing because you get good at it, but then it's like, is this it? Isn't there more to
Yeah.
this? And
I've had doctors that have said exactly that right there. They come back and say, after 10 years, I found myself sitting in respect, retrospect, looking back over the time that I've been there, how I entered into medicine, going into medical school, and where I was 10 years later. And I found that I wasn't happy because I wasn't making a difference. I was just keeping the status quo alive. And I really feel bad because I can understand. I mean, after what I did for 34 years, I had to rewire. I decided not to retire, but I rewired my brain and took on a different industry, and it's been very fulfilling.
Chris, do you mind if we spend a minute or two just talking about your background and kind of
Oh,
how you, is that okay, Kim?
Sure.
it's I'm
That-
talking for you. It's a fantastic. I love his story of you can tell he's kind of your peeps, Dr. John, when he was at a Tony Robbins event, is how he kind of fell upon this. So
Okay.
you'll have to hear this. So I'll let you take it in, and it'd be great to start off kind of playing on his quote and then going into. I'll let you guys take it off.
Sounds good. Three, two, one. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are just kind of scratching the surface with our conversation with Chris Bazzy, an entrepreneur, right, who is looking at microcurrents to help heal chronic wounds and folks with chronic pain. But Chris, before you got into this, during the break, you had mentioned you were doing something for 35 years, and obviously the quote that you alluded to was the ability to kind of rethink, retrain, et cetera. And we were just kind of touching base on that during the break that a lot of us can get complacent. And I think in order to find fulfillment and inspire others and elevate others, you kind of have to be thinking outside the box for yourself. And so tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind, your story and what you were doing for 35 plus years. And then all of a sudden, according to Kimberly, you had a aha moment at a Tony Robbins conference. And so I'm dying to hear that. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to listen now.
All right. Yeah, so I went through college. I wanted to be a doctor. I took 2 years of Latin and started preempting everything. And my first year into college, a professor asked, how many of y'all want to go into medical school? And we all raised our hands. And he took me aside. I went back up and asked him why he had asked that question. And he said, because if you think that you're going to have a family life after becoming a medical doctor, he said, you have to rethink how that's going to be because it's very difficult to have both. And I thought, no, I want to have a family. So my dad was in the insurance business, and I just decided to transition out and go immediately into that. I left school and I went and learned from my father, who was one of the top managers for a major company here in the United States. And I thought, what better way to learn that industry than to go and learn from somebody who knows it inside and out, and I could learn the shortcuts. And so I did. Spent 34 years in the insurance industry. And then just decided one day I was tired of it. I rewired instead of retired, and I sat down and started doing some studies. And it was about mental science, why we are where we are, why we do what we do. What takes somebody who has 5 PhDs and they become broke and destitute, and how does a guy that's living under a bridge become a multimillionaire? And that really intrigued me to a point to where I started studying. Hence the reason why I went to a Tony Robbins event. There's a long story behind that, but I um I had studied under some of Tony's stuff back in the 80s, and I just decided to go to this event, so I did. And getting off the elevator at this event in San Jose, California, called it's Power. Let's see, what was it? Um, Oh, it was the very first one that I went to. Anyway, I went to that event, and getting off the elevator on the second floor, everybody on that elevator was going to the conference, but this one lady stepped off, I stepped off, and we were heading to the conference on the second floor. And about halfway there, she turned around and started talking to me, and we had a lot in common. But she was talking about a piece of equipment that she was using, and I was using a piece of equipment in the insurance industry, and we thought it was the same thing. And I went to go visit her. She was treating horses.
Can I ask
And
you a
I was,
question before you get into
yeah,
the horse treatment? Uh, why did she stop and turn around to talk to you? Did she get an idea of who you were, or what you might have been doing, or was it just random and she was just walking ahead of you and was like, "Oh, I think there's someone behind me that's going to the same place. Let's just go together."
that's exactly what it was. That right
Oh,
there.
wow.
Yeah, she just stopped. She was probably 25, 30 yards ahead of me. And she just stopped and waited for me to get there and goes, "Are you going to Tony?" I said, "Yeah." And we started that conversation. When we got done, I went to go visit her at her ranch and saw what she was doing with horses. And it was just amazing. I mean, she would go to horses, veterinarians facilities that were getting ready to be put down because they had broken legs. They were no longer able to race. And she took those horses and started treating them with this equipment. And I then went to California. From after that, I went to California to learn how to use the equipment. And it was shortly after I learned how to use the equipment, I blew my knee out on my motorcycle. And they told me it was going to be 6 to 9 months before I was able to walk again, because I had tibia fracture. I had all the meniscus blown out, tendons. It was just a mess. Tibia plateau and tibia fractures. And so I called her on the phone and asked her if she could send me a piece of the equipment, and she had it to me in 24 hours. And I started using the protocols that I was taught, and it just wasn't helping. The pain levels were down some, but it just wasn't giving me any kind of relief. So I immediately started calling people that I knew in the industry and started asking questions. And I found a gentleman who knew a lot about everything. He was like a little genius about electricity and about cellular
So
science, just everything. And I started talking to him, and he and I started doing therapies, and I started figuring out protocols through the musculoskeletal, the neurological, blood flow, and
this
started
was a
coming
piece of
up with these different
equipment.
ones. Hmm?
Right. This was a piece of equipment that was using microcurrents, right? I want to
Correct.
get into a little bit more detail about what
Yep.
that is. Um,
Yep. And I bought that
but
machine from her.
and so it worked on horses, but you found it didn't translate into people, or at least your use case in your experience, which
Um,
led you to
Correct.
wanting to develop something because you figured out why it didn't work for you.
That was the hard part, is trying to figure out what would move blood flow and healing to tissue at a much faster rate. And in 6 weeks' time, the protocols were figured out, and I was up on a crutch and rehabbed the knee, no surgeries. Everything healed back, came back, the meniscus, everything. That my right knee is actually stronger than my left knee still. And so
That's
that was the
amazing.
thing that started it.
Okay, so the I'm still kind of back on. So it's a microcurrent. Can you explain the actual technology itself?
Sure. So the instruments themselves, they use microcurrent at a millionth of an amp. So it's very, very low, unlike a TENS machine, which is at very high rate. So a TENS machine is like 1,000 miles an hour, and a trillionth of or a millionth of an amp is like 10 miles an hour. it travels much slower, but it's more in line with how the body moves. So the body moves at a very slow rate compared to what a TENS machine does. Hence the reason why TENS machines are able to help with pain and inflammation because they go at such a fast rate, they beat the pain center to the brain. So as the brain, as the normal pain is running through the center, through the neural system, the TENS machine will run faster. It will go faster, get there quicker. Hence the reason why you do a lot of different changes with the TENS machine to offset what the body gets accustomed to.
Fantastic. Well, coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to get to the heart of this um, electric current that has the potential to reduce inflammation, remove scar tissue, and potentially improve diabetic and heal diabetic wounds. So don't go away. Stay right here on KDOW in the Heart of Innovation. I think we need to take just a few steps back as we
Okay.
start off again, because I think we got ahead of ourselves, and I think we might be talking above people. I don't think they know the amps, and they don't know what that means.
Okay.
And so what I was trying to hopefully get at maybe is, so you had this machine, it was this microcurrent technology, and our bodies are
Yeah.
electricity. I think we probably need to get back to the fact that our bodies are electricity, and that's why and all of our cells are like batteries, right?
Mhm.
And so this is like replenishing kind of the batteries in our bodies. um and
Okay.
then the micro with the my understanding is that the technology that was there and why it didn't work for you is because it you had talked to me about the fact that it wasn't reading your body, and it was just giving you one set frequency what it thought you needed, right? But what your
Yeah.
ultimate technology, what you ultimately discovered was the ability to create a machine and develop protocols whereby it reads your body, the body gives the machine feedback, and then the machine ends up kind of determining what frequency. Or am I kind of getting
Yeah.
ahead of, was that,
No, I
or
think
was
you're right. I think you're right. We need to go back and just start from that part of it to explain the equipment because I bypassed that. It wasn't the fact that the machine couldn't do it. It's the fact that the protocol, the way I was doing it and the way I was taught wasn't aggressive enough. And so most of the teachings around this equipment are very PT. They're very physical therapy type techniques where they're not aggressive. They don't get to the point. So they're treating the symptom, but they're not going back to what the cause was. And they're not
okay.
tracing it back to the cause. And then they're not able to find out how to remove the calcification that is blocking that so that that cause will diminish and now allow us to go into the symptom and work on it. And I know that I can get it to where it's simpler.
Okay.
Okay.
John, you want to take us back, and we'll start a little bit further back in the technology and help people kind of understand
Sure.
um, kind of the electric currents in the body and all that stuff.
Good stuff. This is a
And I
lot to chew
think
on. Here we go. How long is this
Yeah.
one?
I think we'll do 8 minutes
8?
again.
Okay. Because we've done 10, 8, and then this one's 8. Okay.
Yeah.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Chris, fascinating topic. And, again, the skeptic in me wants to dive into the science a little bit more. And so let's, if we can, rewind. So our
Okay.
bodies are electrical, right? I mean, so cells, channels open and close in the cells to let ions in, so positive charges, negative charges, and that's kind of how the body works, how energy is made. You are referencing a device that sounds like that creates a current of some sort that can, I'm assuming it's placed on the skin or an area where there's some chronic pain or inflammation or an area of interest. And then that device kind of elicits or sends out a current that potentially has a way to help heal things or reduce inflammation. So I know, for example, we will use like high energy acoustic waves directly on the muscles or tendons or whatever that help kind of create what I consider micro trauma, so small areas of trauma and inflammation that ultimately lead to reductions in certain neurochemicals or transmitters. These are the signalers in the neural pathways. One of which is something called substance P, which is is around and at higher levels in folks that have chronic pain. So the theory behind some of these devices, the ones with like acoustic energy, it reduces the levels of substance P, and then that can help reduce some of the issues with chronic pain. Is that what this device is doing? It's creating a charge of some sort, or providing energy externally and then internally that can help reduce some of the neurotransmitters that cause pain, or the neurotransmitters that are leading to chronic inflammation? Or am I completely out to lunch?
Oh, you got it. So let's just start at, let's back up just a little bit to where I was. So the body has trillions and trillions of cells, and every cell has a battery. That battery has a capacitance just like your car. At 100% capacitance, it works, it functions, it removes waste, it keeps inflammation down, it transports nutrition, it's doing its job, creating new tissue, it's functioning in its normal world. When you have trauma or inflammation, or you have a bacteria, whatever happens to that cell that causes it to diminish, that cell now becomes non-functioning to its capacitance. So it can't work. Just like a car can't start, this cell cannot do its job. What this piece of equipment does is it reads tissue at 100 times a second, and we use a probe. So a probe that's kind of shaped like a finger or a square plate, a 1x1 or a 1x3. The one of those instruments is reading tissue at a normal, it's picking up a normal capacitance, and then it's reading, it's responding, and then it reads, repeats, and responds. Reads, repeats, responds, just like a guidance missile. So it's reading the tissue, it's responding to that by changing the frequency on the instrument to the cell. And so what it's doing is it's taking that cell, just like a car battery being jumped, and it's elevating that cell to where it gets more and more energy to where it now is functioning. And then the ATP, which is like gasoline for the body, it gives the body ATP, and your body starts that healing process. So basically what it's doing is it's just putting the body back to its ability to function in the area where there's inflammation, there's diminished cellular capacity, there is scar tissue that's impeding the neural system, and it's doing this on the fly at 100 times a second.
And how is it different? Because there are other devices like EEG and things like that
Mhm.
that it's not doing what yours is doing, which is it's just giving you a bunch of frequencies.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah.
asking your body what is the frequency at this very moment in this very spot
Mhm.
what it needs. And
Yep.
that's where you're saying your technology sets itself apart.
Correct. So it's intelligent, it's biofeedback. So the machine itself is asking the body, what do you need? The body is sending that back to the machine and said, this is what I need. The machine then shifts, sends that current back into that cell area, and gives that cell what it needs so that that cell can come back up and run again. And it's doing that communication 100 times a second.
Is there data to support this?
Sure.
Meaning, do you have data that says or demonstrate that the
Mhm.
device alters the cell itself? I mean, that sounds amazing. And
It does.
I'm a little skeptical, right?
Yeah. So this is FDA approved. It's been around since the 70s. What we did differently was is that we pulled the protocols together that took a more aggressive direction, going after the causational, not the symptomatic. And when we put those protocols together, we saw that we were able to actually move patients at a very quick rate. And I mean, we've done, I know it's coming up here in a little bit, but we've done a bunch of these therapies, well over 25,000 therapies in the last 6 years in Vegas. And we have a high efficacy, really good rate.
Wow. And you even have some patients that were quadriplegics and
Mhm,
paraplegics, and
mhm.
there was a paper that was published on that. Would you mind talking about the results of wound healing for these
Yeah.
patients?
So one of the toughest wounds in the wound world to take care of is a sacral wound, especially on a quad or a paraplegic, because it's right there at the base of the spine, right where the body weight is sitting all the time. And if they don't get moved or turned, that that weight causes the eruption in the skin there. And so that sacral wound is it's like it's just very, very difficult to heal. So we tackled a sacral wound. We have a case study that was published, and we were able to take a sacral wound that was well over 4 years, and we were able to treat that. The body does all the work. We don't take any credit for doing that. It's the body that gets that help, and with it, the body does the work and it does all the healing itself. Unlike most wound healing, where you debride, so you're cutting the wound to get it to bleed, to bring in blood flow, packing with collagen. There's all types. There's skin flaps. There's a lot of things that they do in wound healing, but ultimately, the doctor, the physician, or the nurse practitioner, whoever's doing that uh, wound treatment, they have to just step back and then say, "Okay, body, and now it's your job to do the healing." What we do is we come in and actively create cellular regeneration by adding that energy piece to it so that the wound starts to granulate and starts to form a good ridging and starts to close. And that's what we do.
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, I want to hear Dr. John's thoughts. He's a plumber. He actually opens up the arteries in the legs and the heart, but in terms of the legs, especially with the diabetic patients, he can get those main highways opened up, but sometimes it's the little side roads that have an issue to prevent healing. So this could be an option, and I want to hear more about that and Dr. John's thoughts. That's next right here on KDOW, the Heart of Innovation.
Sweet.
I just set you up.
You did. There's a lot to unpack there, Chris
Uh,
and Kimberly.
it's
Um,
a it's tough. Um, it's tough to explain, but especially with somebody who has their hands in the position where you are looking at the vascular system and the issues that go on with the stents and all of the things that happen. We can put a probe somewhere, even if there's no blood flow there, and we can actually get blood flow to move into there because when energy starts to energize the muscle, it starts to drive or draw in blood down through that system. And we can bring blood into, I haven't found a place yet, even in on these horrible wounds that are on feet. I think
It's funny
there's
because you can
some,
actually, I have proof on my arm. I got a little cherry angioma on my arm. It brought like the blood right up, to right up
yeah,
to the top.
Wait, so
yeah.
On my
Kim, did you have this device?
Yeah, so did my
Oh,
dad. Yeah,
all right.
no,
So okay, so we've got to maybe we do that in the last segment. There's 4 minutes. Or so wait, how much time do we have for this one? So section
we have about
four.
8 minutes,
Oh,
30
8:30. Okay.
seconds.
And then the next one's four. Okay, so let's
But he
yeah,
also has a couple interesting stories about a pro golfer and also a world champion boxer.
sweet. All right, let's go. I want to hear more about you know, what type of who would come and seek out your services. I guess that's an interest to me because well, I guess I can ask it on the air, so we'll do that.
That's easy. And we
Yeah.
ask doctors to send us that patient that they know by name, that one that you're just not getting any help, that you're trying to help, and they're just a thorn in the side. They're not going away. We just say, "What do you have to lose? Send them to
Yeah.
us."
Okay,
And
cool.
that was me also with my arm. Like I still, since the COVID vaccine, I couldn't move my arm. And so that's what they were working on. And actually, they totally reduced the swelling in my hand to the point I can actually see knuckles.
Seeing is believing. This is all right.
I
Let's
know.
go.
I was I
Let's
was I
talk
was a
about
little
this.
skeptical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is crazy. Okay, cool. Ready? Three, two, one. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Continuing a very stimulating and electrical conversation with Chris.
Shocking.
Yes,
Shocking.
shocking and all the puns out there. So, Chris, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Obviously, you've got a technology that uses electricity to kind of help recharge at a cellular level that can do it sounds like pretty impressive things, improve wound healing, decrease inflammation. Is this in some way, and we were talking about it during the break, but is this in some way just drawing or improving perfusion and blood flow to these areas of inflammation and wounds, or what else is going on there? Because at the end of the day, like you had said, the body has to heal itself. So what do you think is that one mechanism of action that's doing this?
Um, I think it's two things. One is increased blood flow is everything. I mean, you get blood flow moving into an area, and that's half the battle right there, I think. And the other side is getting the calcium, potassium, and sodium gates in that cell to move waste. And if you can get that body to move that waste, and you're getting blood flow, now you're repopulating muscle into an area, which populates the neurological system into that area, back in that area.
So now uh, you have a clinic in Las Vegas, or and are there similar clinics like yours throughout the country? Or are you very, very specialized in kind of a one person show in this particular area?
And can I
Um,
jump in on this because it's offered? The thing is that this type of thing, and I was even skeptical when I first met him because there are all these chiropractors across the country that offer this electrical stimulation to help with neuropathy and improve the blood flow. And all of it is a farce. I mean, it's my opinion, it's my experience, so no hate mail. But it literally, I have patients that come to me and they give this false hope. They have to pay cash and they're going broke going to these places with absolutely no results. And I can't believe that the FDA allows them to go on with advertising on television and in newspapers that this stuff works. Because honestly, in my experience, it does not. So when I met Chris, he totally agreed with me and said, "But here's how ours is different, and it didn't work for me either. But we were able to redesign it so that it would work." And so that's where they opened the place in Las Vegas and just opening a place in San Antonio. Correct. So you only have the two locations, right, Chris?
Correct. So in Las Vegas, we just expanded, and then in San Antonio, we're moving into a facility here in San Antonio that has a physician there. We're going to work with him and see how it comes along. But
So Chris,
the
as
main
a
thing, go ahead.
no, sorry to interrupt, but like, so let's say let's say I have a wound, okay, that is not healing. My doctors are frustrated. They come across your website. They reach out to you and say, okay, I've read about this. Does this work? And a question that I would have is, what are your credentials? Like, how do how is it that you can claim to do this? And number one, and then number two, okay, I'll send my patient there. I imagine this. I don't know if it's covered by insurance, so there's probably some costs involved. And I guess how do you screen patients to say, okay, you're a good candidate, and I think we can do this, or you know what, maybe this isn't for you.
So to go back to the very beginning when you said how do you bring this out and talk about what you can do and what it's not what we do, although we are helping the body to do that. It's more along the lines of working in concert with the body so that the body can produce a much better healing environment. Sometimes we have to look at the patient and say, okay, tell us what your diet is. Let's get you, and we'll put them on a good clean water source while they're there. We'll get them on a nitric oxide tablet that actually populates into the body. Uh, so that nitric oxide tablet will assimilate through the body. And there's only one, it's Dr. Nathan Bryant is the one that I'm working with. He's teamed up with us, and we're getting ready to start doing some studies with that as well. But we look at all the different facets of it, and the body just, it's our birthright to heal. I mean, you cut yourself and you heal. You don't have to ask your body to do it. It does it automatically. So what we're doing is we're just giving the body an opportunity to take what it needs and to do its job. And what we do is we watch it. We've been doing this for, I've been involved in this for 10 years. And we have watched patient after patient after patient. And the way that the patient finds us is the doctor says, we're going to amputate, try it. And that was one of my biggest wounds, was an amputee. He was a pro golfer and they were getting ready to take his foot off. And he came and saw us, and within 9 weeks, and I have the pictures if you'd like me to send them to you, but within
Oh, I'd
nine
love to
weeks,
see it.
his foot populated, all the tendons were exposed, bones were exposed, the tissue grew into place, and he's playing golf again. He's minus a pinky toe, but he's playing golf again.
Well, he's got 9 of the 10 piggies.
Yeah, he
So
said that pinky's real expensive though, because it cost him to swing. Go ahead.
That's- so then can this hurt somebody? So I guess the
Great
point you
question.
the point you made, you have nothing to lose. And sometimes
Yeah.
I think that way too, in someone who has no blood flow going to their foot. And I'm not gonna knock on wood, but it's highly, highly unlikely I'm gonna kill them. And if they're already staring down a major amputation, what do I have to lose?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
can you hurt them?
No, they could stay hooked up to the equipment 24/7. The only thing that's going to happen to them is they may detox. There's no pain. There's no pain. There's no harm. They just detox.
So Kim, you had this done. Is this a like an ECG patch? Is someone holding a probe on you? Like, how does this work?
So there were little metal pieces. So they would put a little metal piece in one spot, for example, because I had lost use, and it's documented, so I can say I lost use of my arm following the COVID shot. I just had a bad reaction, and so it's been a lot of time that my fingers are stiff. I still have a lot of swelling. I have joint leakage, and within a few sessions, I could actually see my knuckles again, which was amazing. For the first time in like 4 years, I could actually see knuckles on my hands. And when you ask about side effects, there could be a little bit of extra swelling with a little more water retention, which we noticed. My dad also came with me because it's been 2 years for him. He's had heavy legs. He has not been able to walk. He has lower back issues. He's had PRP or stem cells put in his back, and nothing was really that effective to get him out walking. And this really helped him and got him excited and gave him more energy and to get out there and go. And in fact, he's going to go back for additional treatments. I do suggest it, people more in Las Vegas doing it, and then you're able to do several weeks, do a long term, like what the golfer did, 6 to 9 weeks or something. Because actually it feels so good. It hurts so good when you're doing it. And my dad even had, and this is interesting, my dad even had, they did a stimulation for his brain. And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to hear about a pro boxer that also had the same treatment on his brain. So stay with us right here on KDOW, the Heart of Innovation. Don't go away.
All right. I was going to
You're
say,
right. She is quick.
yeah, she's much better than I am.
Yeah, that
So,
segue was quick.
yeah,
So
exactly.
we only have 4 minutes, but I think the boxer story would be
Sure.
really
Let's do
cool,
it. Let's
because
do it.
he's helping with people with depression, people who are suicidal. And I think this boxer was even suicidal. You get knocked in the head so many times, right?
Yep.
But we only have 4 minutes. So in short, if we could do that, but then also I just want to sum it up with some final takeaways in your website. And John, it would be great, just your healthy dose of skepticism just in the end, just so we balance it out.
Love it. Happy to do it. Okay. So 4 minutes.
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everybody. We've only got 4 minutes left. Honestly, I wish we could talk for an hour or two without commercial interruptions, but that's the price of doing live radio. Nonetheless, Chris, so before we went to break, we were kind of talking about where this can be, what body part it can be used on, and you had alluded to, or Kimberly did, about the brain and potentially folks with depression and a pro boxer that you help. Could you share a little bit behind that? And then I guess my question would be, is there any place where you can't put this stuff? I mean, within reason?
No, we've treated almost every part of the human body. So the boxer was referred to us because he was suicidal. He was a three-time world champion boxer, won a medal in the Olympics. He had an orbital wall crush in the Olympics, and that's why he did not win the gold that year. He came to us. His wife said that she wouldn't leave him at home because he was so suicidal. We did a headband ear clip treatment where we treated the cranium and through the ear stem, through the base of the brain, through the ears. Did several treatments with him, and today he is training some of the top boxers in Las Vegas as they come through. He's one of the top coaches there, doing wonderful.
That's amazing. And so I know we have to
Mhm.
head out of the show. I wish, again, we could spend so much more time, but Dr. John, this is your first time hearing about this type of technology. Just curious your thoughts and questions you may have still.
I will say that doing a show like this has opened my mind on a number of levels. I mean, Pat, last week we were talking about regenerative soil and the soil sick, and so I love the idea of thinking outside the box. And it sounds like you've had a lot of people that you have helped. Again, I would try to be driven by science and data, and so clearly there's probably some skepticism. But at the end of the day, it sounds like you know people have had problems. They've been treated. They've done well, or they've done better, and maybe I don't know, maybe there's a placebo effect, who knows, but who honestly, who cares if they're cured or they're feeling better, their wound is healing. I think that's all that matters. And by no means have we cornered the market on how to treat anything for that matter, and Mother Nature's pretty smart, and we're always going to keep evolving. So I want to learn more about it, and I'd love to next time I'm in Vegas. I'm gonna maybe stop by, and my brain needs some help, so let's do it.
You can do an actual reset, but Chris, it's really interesting. I mean, if all hope is lost, there's nothing else that doctors supposedly can do, then of course, why not try? If it can't hurt you, then why not at least try? But this is a technology. You said it's FDA approved. It's already being used by PT, physical therapists across, around the world who are
Mhm.
using it for pain relief because they know that it works. You're just taking it to a whole new level to not just treat the symptoms, but to also get to the cause.
Correct. Yep, that's it.
And so people want to learn more. What is your website?
The website is being redone right now. It'll go live here soon, and I'll send you that link when I get ready, when it's up and running. But it's going to be biocelllife.com, and they should have that up here within the next week or so. We just took it down to redo everything again.
Fantastic. Well, thank
Cool.
you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you, and thank you for treating my dad and me. Last week's when we got some new energy.
Yeah,
It was electric. So thank you
good.
everyone for joining us. Really appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thank you, everybody.
And
Thank you.
I Awesome. And just before
Cool.
we go, there's a few people that I wanted to give shout outs to. We have Jerry Cash who's on there, hey, from Parkersburg, West Virginia. And he also mentions that Dr. Nathan has taught him so much. Not sure if you know him, but that's
Oh yeah.
pretty cool to hear that Dr. Nathan is, really awesome. But I think that Dr. John should try that nitric oxide because I'm going to
Mhm.
tell you, and I wouldn't put it on the radio, but that I've been reading a lot about nitric oxide and the deficiency of nitric oxide leading to diabetes, which I found really interesting. But there's no test to know that you're really deficient, and so it's really tough. And there are a
Yeah.
lot of different supplements that are out there that everyone's pushing. And I'm going to tell you, I've tried several of them. They don't work until I actually tried his. Oh, the one it's called No Beats, Beetz, and that one, and I don't know if it's because you shook it and it released everything, but it really that you could feel some
Yeah.
difference in energy,
And
literally.
No Beats is it's a great product to take if you're going to go work out. It doesn't, so nitric oxide, nitrate goes into nitrite, and that nitrite has to attach to the citrulline and arginine. Those three combined is what gives the nitric oxide gas release into the vascular system. Dr. Bryant, he did his residency under Nobel Peace Prize winners for nitric oxide in the 90s. So
Hmm.
when he went into medical school or into college to do his PhD, that was what he studied. He did his entire thesis and everything on nitric oxide. He found out that we become depleted because our gut is just wearing down more and more and more, and we don't have the ability because we're brushing our teeth with fluoride, which is a neurotoxin. You're taking mouthwash, which is killing all your tongue, your biome in your tongue. And then the last thing is that these proton pump inhibitors, which is one of the top medications that's prescribed in America, is just reducing the amount of nitric oxide translating into the system. And when he tells people that, they look at him and go, "You're crazy." But he knows because he's measured it. So what he does is the minute you take that lozenge, within 15 seconds, the carotid artery relaxes and becomes more open. I've given it to my patients who have ED issues. Some of them, it'll take a month or two before they actually start really seeing, they'll see it pretty quick, but I'm talking about consistently. And I'm talking men who have not had any kind of response.
Hmm.
They line up to buy it because it's just that good. It's really good. So we're getting ready to do a case study where we're going to do just a nitric oxide. So we're going to give him no beats, the lozenges, and he has a serum that we're going to put on the wound as well. And that's the only way we're going to treat it. Then we already have our study on E-stim, so we know that. Then we're going to do the study on the other side of that combines the two therapies and see how much faster we're going to be able to close wounds. And Dr. Chernoff, who is the one who did all of his studies for him that he got his patents on, is going to be working with us.
Amazing. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to hear more. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it
we'll
is.
definitely have to have you back. And we'll have to see, once my dad gets through with all his treatments, maybe we'll do a thing. But also I
We should do a
pulled an
live show.
and we're gonna we should do a live show with him during his treatments. It's actually really interesting to watch. Because they do use a probe. So they put a metal thing on your, the one spot, and then they do a probe and they really dig in there. You can actually tell where by the sound of the frequency and the feeling, because it feels like little bug bites when it hits those spots that have high inflammation, which
Which
is
is
really,
pushback.
yeah.
That's where you're getting pushback. Your cells are pushing back. They're not accepting that. That's when you
Yep. So they
feel it.
have to, and so that's where you kind of tone it down and then you kind of bring it
Mhm.
back up so then it doesn't reject it. Um, and so we played with it quite a bit and it was fun. But we would like to get the pro golfer and the pro boxer on the show.
I'll be in next
I'm
week, so
sure
I'll ask
Dr.
both of
Phillips would
them.
love.
Yeah, I'll ask
Okay.
both of them. I'll send you the pictures on the pro golfer. It's, well, I mean, he probably does. It doesn't bother him, but I'm sure. Did I show it to you? I don't know if I did or not, Kim.
Uh-uh.
Um, it almost looks like a Halloween foot. You see all of the tendons are all frayed because he was in hyperbaric chamber for six
Yeah.
weeks before he came to us. And all of his tendons were frayed. The tissue wasn't reproducing, and we couldn't get the
Yeah.
surgeon to remove the wound vac off of there. We
Oh
literally will
God.
treat right on top of a wound because frequency won't allow bacteria to grow. And we've even done necrotic tissue. So we had a gentleman was a quadriplegic. We had necrotic tissue in a wound, and we put the plate straight on there and treated it. Within 2 days, the necrotic tissue went away without having to breed or pull it out. We just wanted to see.
Hmm.
So we've done a lot of neat things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to revisit that stuff. Again, you have to have an open mind, and it.
You wouldn't
I
be
think,
on here if you didn't.
well, no, and that's the thing. It's even with supplements. I tell patients, listen, it's not going to hurt you. It might help, so try it. If nothing else,
Yeah.
try it. Right.
Yeah.
So I love it.
Yeah.
I got to jump on another call, ladies and gentlemen. So it was a
Bye,
pleasure,
guys.
Chris.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's pretty awesome. We're going to follow up very soon with hopefully more on this technology and just keep following, the stories of people